I think we're ready to start. Okay, sana ko kaya ko na ko. Good afternoon. My name is Travis Played here, and I was hoping to get away from this mic, but it always finds me. A curse. But I was asked to facilitate and help out, which I'm honored to. I was here all day yesterday. Awesome food. Discussion too. But anyways, I apologize. I couldn't be here this morning. I should be a hoop dancer because the government makes me jump through about 50 hoops to get a few dollars. So I was busy at the office catching up on some funding requirements, and I didn't want to miss my duty here as facilitator. So I'd like to welcome all of you, our visitors, to the city of Lethbridge. I have with me my auntie, Blanche Brewstead, right here. And as you know, Blanche was born here at the GALT. No, I'm just kidding. No, she works here. She's been working here for quite some time. But I know her growing up back home on the red, and she comes from a big family, rodeo family, horticulture. So I spent a lot of time with Brewstead. I consider them family. And Blanche, of course, comes with us with a lot of life experience, a lot of experience growing up on the reserve. We always look up to you. You hear a lot about our elders and our grandmothers and our grandfathers. We rely on them a lot, and I'm really honored to be. I told her I'm going to make you work today, so I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions. So thank you, Blanche, for coming up. And we have Andrew with us, Andrew Malcolm. Andrew is the, well, you probably read on the program there. He works with the city of Lethbridge, and he's our, what is your title again?
Urban Revitalization Manager.
Urban Revitalization Manager. And anyways, he takes care of downtown. No, I just kidding. Andrew, along with his colleagues at the city of Lethbridge, I myself have lived and worked in Lethbridge for, I don't know, the last 100 years, something like that. No, I've been here around for quite a while, and I've always had a pretty good working relationship with the city. And Andrew and a few other guys, Perry, Jerry, there's a lot of guys that have come up the ranks, and we got Marty now. Marty right over there. I'm going to make him chief of Lethbridge here pretty quick. He came on a couple of years ago, and I'm really honored to work with him. When you have good colleagues and partners in the city at that level, it makes your job a little easier. So I really commend the work that the city of Lethbridge does. So we are gathered here today. Our topic, I guess, we're going to speak to is community and ceremonial spaces. So Andrew has agreed to sort of talk on the community portion of it, and I'm going to rely on Auntie Blanche here to maybe speak to the ceremonial, and I'll just jump around back and forth and help out wherever I can. So I guess why don't we start with Andrew. And Andrew, if you could just maybe give us a little more information on your role at the city and maybe some of the things that the city is doing as far as community well-being, and just share a little bit of that.
Thank you, Travis, and Oki, everyone. So my role at the City of Lethbridge as Urban Revitalization Manager really is in terms of leading and the engagement around creating place and places of our city that need a little bit of extra attention. So the prime focus, as Travis mentioned, is the downtown. The downtown has been identified by the City of Lethbridge as a key place within our municipality for to be vibrant, to make sure that we're focusing, to make sure that people feel comfortable regardless of your background. And so we spend a lot of time focusing a little bit of extra energy on the downtown. But there's also other areas in our community where just need a little extra love. And so that's where I focus my attention. And within that, a key pillar that I think I bring to that is the focus on spaces as places. And so we need to look at, the urban environment, the environments, whether it's River Valley or built within the city, much more than just the space that it occupies. It has to be a place where that brings people together, comfortable, attractive places that really generate safe places for people to gather and to learn from one another. And so with that, I actually have a definition for what placemaking is to planners. Now that's my background, and I think the wording here is much better than I'd ever be able to describe it, so I think it's important to start off with that. Placemaking inspires people to collectively reimagine and reinvent public spaces at the heart of every community. Strengthening the connection between people and the places they share, placemaking refers to a collaborative process by which we can shape our public realm in order to maximize shared value. More than just promoting better urban design, placemaking facilitates creative patterns of use, paying particular attention to the physical, cultural, and social identities that define a place and support its ongoing evolution. So as it relates to a potential cultural center or a cultural space, I think it's really important that we focus on the process to where we end up with a public place. Of course, an Indigenous cultural center will be open to the public. We want it to be enjoyed by the public, and so the process that gets us there is incredibly important. And the focus on placemaking to get there, I think, is something that I think we should focus on and be interested in engaging with this group and throughout the process on.
Awesome. So, in your planning, when this first, how did you and the city see this building to be? And where, location, any thoughts on that?
I think the really easy answer is we haven't given too much thought about it. We heard from the public, and I think we've heard from the community that there's the need for a cultural center. There's lots of different ideas of what that is, where it could be, and the values that it should be based upon. And that's why Perry's engaged Ask Isaac, and why you're all here today, because we don't know what that is yet, or where it should be. It's about the process to get us to creating this place, which again, I think we're probably about halfway through this today, or yesterday and today, and hopefully we're starting to get a better idea of what that is.
So how about just like right downtown at the GALT Gardens, eh?
That's a good thing, I think. That sounds great.
All right, thank you. So we'll, hopefully you folks will have some questions. Blanche, if you could just give us your thoughts on, you've been here the last couple of days and you've heard all the speakers, you've heard from the elders, you've heard from some community, some of our visitors. What's your thought? You've been working in the city now, you've been doing a lot of cultural training and programming with the schools and the visitors here at the GALT. How do you see the cultural center here in the city?
Okay. As Travis just stated, that I've been here in the city almost 50 years now. My two sons grew up here. They were just little guys when I moved into the city for education. And from that time on, I've made my way through the city of Lethbridge and watched it grow. And when I heard the magical words, cultural center, my first thought was, what kind? And yesterday and all this morning, the talks, like, my spirit is soaring. It's just very elated that there's gonna be, someone mentioned the word Indigenous Cultural Center. Let's just, let's get rid of our human, very, very profound mistake. Always dividing and separating and categorizing and putting into ricky-ticky-tacky boxes of who, what, where, why, when we are. Let's just stop that. Let's just once, maybe for 10 seconds, let's take into our spirit, into our mind, Matapiks, Kanetapiks, people, all people. I've been so privileged over my short lifetime to have elders pray. Even this young man here, he calls me Auntie, which is an absolute blessing on me. He's my grandfather. Before him, his father was my grandfather. Before Pete, it was a deceased son and his wife. These things that we, as Madaptiks, know, what we have is an opportunity to let other people, all people, get a good earful, eyeful of what we do know. It's just been over and over and over again to the point where I have a really thick skin now, and I just smile. And I think to myself, oh, person, go back to school, go get an education. You know, of the things that I've heard, me and my babies, as we walk down one of the streets, maybe going for groceries or going for a movie or going for a meal or going to pay my rent. Dirty Indian, with a bunch of kids. I only had 2. I wanted 12 and I only got 2. These are things that bring about the statements that are said, the looks, the confrontation, the lunges at you from other people. These are the things that are brought out because of uneducation. I'm going to go so far ahead of the archaeologists, or the architects, the planners. I'm going to go way in front of them. I'm just going to really, really push the buttons. This place that hopefully will become, and with Mary I pray, with Charlene I pray, with our elders from both sides of the river, I pray that this structure begins very, very soon. Like this coming spring, which is like, I believe it's the end of this week. This structure has been long in coming to connect the peaks, all people. We're just going to be the proud, again, human beings that are willing, able, and so geared up to share what good fortune that is coming down down the pipe to us. 150 years, 300 years ago, we stood there looking at each other. And the First Nation saying, "Kidney, your skates is stuck in them." You know, gee, they look weird. They've got no color to their hair. And look at the color of their eyes. Their skin is, the sun doesn't like their skin. They're not tanned like we are. Yet we were there to share what we had. And people, you have to understand the three main components of Nichitabi and culture that was that built our culture is plants, animals, and minerals. We, Matapi, being part of the animals, because all creation, we are not ahead of it, we're not above it, we're not, in charge of it, we are part of it. And this is how I try to plant seeds in the wee little people that come all the way through the different levels of non-native education, the different levels of the 4 phases of life for all human beings. I try to plant that seed that we are part of nature. We're not in charge of it. We don't own. Go outside and find a grain of dirt. That grain of dirt is not yours. That grain of dirt owns you, us Matapiks. This is why I am so excited. And honestly, people have been talking about this for 20, 25 years. I'm praying that they don't sit and talk about it for another 20, 25 years. I want to walk into this building. I want to feel part of it. So what I'm saying, guys and gals, from all the different walks of life, Matapi, people, get with the program. Let's get this building going. Like I said, spring is coming. It's at the end of this coming week. So let's stop the jaw flapping and whatnot. Let's put action into. Thank you.
Well, I got phone. Unfortunately, did you hear what I said? We have to jump through hoops.
Yeah.
We have a few more hoops to jump through,
Yeah, well,
okay?
isn't it time that we, the people, put those guys through the hoops?
Yeah. All right. All right. Don't get mad at me. Just facilitate.
Everybody's afraid of me because I'm passionate.
Well, Blanche, you're, you and I have, I consider Lethbridge my home. Both my boys were raised here. We just recently moved back onto the res about 5 years ago. And it's good to be back home. I'm used to that. I grew up there, and I'm originally from Stanislaus. And my father's from the old agency district, and that's where I live now. And I commute into town now. I did take a job for a little while on the reserve. I only lasted 3.5 years. And a job offer came up at the Friendship Center. I applied, and I told my old boss, well, the chief was my old boss, Charlie. I told him, if I get this job, I'm probably going to accept it. And he said, fine, we don't need you anyway. Get out of the reserve. So I took the job, so I've been here for 2.5 years now. This past April was 2 years. I had worked at the Friendship Center before as a youth worker, and like you, my passion is the young people. These, the older generation, including myself, that old saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, and some people are just dead set in their ways, and there's no sense trying to change them. You can try and work with them, but sometimes it's a difficult job. And so I believe that the key is the young people, the little guys, and that's who I focus on, and teach them to understand and learn how to get along with people. Because it goes right back to our core values as it's Gagnon. I've heard that brought up quite a bit from different speakers, and I totally 100% agree with that. In fact, my father said one time, if we all followed our ways, the Gagnon ways, then we would have no social problems, because our old people did it. There was no violence, there was no hunger, there was no abuse, there was no bingo. No, there was homelessness right down the hill over here. No, I'm just kidding. So, like Blanche, I got used to living in the city and working in the city, and like it's been years we first heard about it, about a potential cultural center, and we were back in Bob Tarlick days. We were talking about it. And Chris Spearman, I knew Bob Tarlick quite well. We sat on the board for Aboriginal housing, and talk about jumping through hoops trying to get housing for our people. But Bob Tarlick stuck behind us. We got the job done, and now Aboriginal housing, thanks to Boyd, they own buildings right across the city now. But it was tough back then getting the things we had to go through to get that Fifth Avenue apartment complex built. And I told Bob Tarlick one time, after we were successful in securing the land, we bought the land, we built the house, the building, we moved in. I was the first one to move in. And I told Bob Tarlick at our last meeting, at our next meeting of the board, and I told him, you know, Bob Tarlick, we just went through a lot, but we got that land. Oh yeah, that's good. You know, Bob, I think we can buy back Lethbridge one lot at a time. And Bob Tarlick was kind of laughing, then he stopped laughing. He said, you know what? You could actually do that. Yeah, because we did it. And right now we own property on the west side, north side, south side, so we're growing. So, you know, times have, you know, it's just patience and things get better. But like you said, you know, we don't want to wait too long, and I think right now the wheels are in motion. I can't speak for the mayor, but I get along pretty good with the mayor. He has an open door policy. I can come visit him, talk with him, shoot the breeze, bump money off him, get free parking, waive my tickets, so good relationship. And his heart's in the right place, Blanche. I know that I can say. And I know that the city is also in a good place too. So my job is to ask questions. So I'm going to go back to Andrew. Andrew, in your time here in the city, in the work that you have done, how do you envision this cultural center to be? Never mind location or that. What would you like your children? You have children? What would your children like to see? What would you like to see? How would you like to see this cultural center interact with the community?
So I just, if anybody knew, recently we took forward downtown parking changes, so now you know who to blame. It's all Travis's wave tickets, that's the reason behind that. But in terms of, you know, again, thinking of the cultural center as a place, I look back at, you know, the way that I grew up in southern Alberta, in Calgary, in terms of what I was exposed to from an educational perspective on Blackfoot culture, on Indigenous culture. And I was thinking about this in preparation for today. It was all about how the Indigenous people use the buffalo and use the buffalo for all the pieces. When I think back to my education, that's my one takeaway, and I think that's incredibly short-sighted. It's unfortunate in terms of over the last few years through my involvement with the Reconciliation Lethbridge Committee and learning from Perry and others. There is so much more that I hope future generations get to learn about your culture. And I think this facility is the perfect mechanism or building or structure or place or ceremonial space for our future generations to actually learn about the true culture of Blackfoot and other Indigenous individuals. And so I really think that's fundamental. And I think, again, going back to process, that's why we need to understand, the European culture, the traditional culture needs to take a step back and allow the right process to take place here. In that, we want to rush it, Blanche, I understand completely. We also want to make sure it's done right, and that we allow the place to have walls if it's a structure, but also to allow those boundaries that Blanche referred to in terms of breaking down those borders, those walls, those buckets, so that it's a place for everyone, and that we can allow true reconciliation to take place within the center, and we can allow for learning to continue for future generations, so that when we're talking to my two daughters in 20 years, that they're not just talking about how the buffalo can be used in 1,000 different ways.
First Walmart with the buffalo. Right, Blanche? Now we got two, one on the north and one on the south side, working on the west side. Blanche, a little bit about East Udno. Gates of the ceremonial. How do you see like ceremonial space? We know East Udno, the GALT, Akukats, is sort of like our mecca. That's where all the societies come together every year. Could you see the center playing some kind of a role in that?
Really, it depends on it depends on the members of the societies. All my growing up years, our grandfathers from way back set aside that certain part of the Blood Reserve for Akukats and Circle Camp, and they used nature itself as their theater, as their gathering spots. That's why there's a lot of I call them the gophers, the archaeologists. It's because I can't say that word just right off the top of my
Archaeologists?
Them guys, the gophers, they're digging up our history, our past. And it goes back to we living off of the land, from the land, within the land. And so it would depend on Sikhs, they're going to share the parts that they can do during Akukats and during Circle Camp time, and that for that to be open again to all people in this place. But it would be awesome, because there's times when nature itself turns on us. You can attest to that. Akukats and the winds, the rain. It was just scary. And if there was a place that we could bring those processes into that's culturally based. There's so many things that this building can, when it's a reality, can be utilized for. Instead of me having, I have a little bitty arbor inside the gallery here. It's just a little place that holds maybe 50 people. Geez, Travis, Andrew, architects, I could take and put together 500 people in that building and do my program. Wouldn't that be awesome? See, these are just like random thoughts, you know, kind of overemphasizing. But the thing is, it's time. The two peoples, the neighbors, we've come 135 years from then to now. Let's make the next 130, 150, 1,000, 10,000 years, whatever. Totally hand in hand, shoulder to shoulder, as true brothers and sisters. And this is a really good starting point.
So my next question, I know everybody wants an answer to, is will they impeach Donald Trump? I had to throw that in there. That's my new addiction, CNN. You know, working at the Friendship Center, we don't really have a space for us to gather. And me and my colleague, Sean here, and my co-workers, we're working towards that, trying to at least make the Friendship Center that kind of go-to space. And we've decided that our focus will be the culture. We need a hub where we can go. And I know you and Susan do a lot of good work here. The university does a lot of good work. The college does a lot of good work. But we're trying to make the Friendship Center a little more active in, as far as cultural programming. So we got some stuff lined up for the fall here going into the new year. So look out for our notices on those. You know, and the other thing too that I thought about was the only way you create goodwill between people, regardless of who you are, is education. And the more you learn about your neighbor, the better off you're going to be. So we promote, we try to promote a good relationship with everybody. So our doors are open to anybody that wants to come, whether it just be to hang out or if they're there to ask questions and that. And lately, I guess it's because of my involvement with Akukatsin, I've had a lot of visitors seeking help as far as getting in contact with our grandfathers and our grandmothers. And just this morning, Blanche, I was called a shaman. True story. I was sitting in my office this morning. These two young couple, non-native, came to the door of my receptionist. Said, "Travis, you busy?" No, there's a couple people here. They're looking for a shaman. Oh, well, Sean's not here. Just kidding. So, well, you know, in our ways, we don't turn anybody away. If somebody's coming to seek help, you do your best in any way you can to help. So I invited them in, and I had to straight. So there's education right there. No such thing as a shaman here in Blackfoot country, all right? So they learned something, and I learned something. And we made an arrangement. We're going to help them out as best we can. But that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. You know, we need to, I know there's a lot of negative stuff out there. We deal with it every day. And again, I'm going to go back to the teachings of God's and knowledge and our grandmothers and our grandfathers. And we're taught to stay on the positive and ignore the negative. The negative is always going to be there, but focus on the positive, and that'll get you through the day. So those are some of the teachings that Gan. I always like to say Gan. It's a Gan, well, Matsatigi. I'm not from Sitiga, I'm not from Tigani, I'm not free, I'm not shaman. I'm a Ganak boy, and that's all I can speak to, nothing else. So I think when we're talking about this space, community space, I think ceremonial space, there is opportunity there to share what you can. And I heard my uncle, cousin over here, Roy speak about it when Andy told him there's some things that I shouldn't be telling you this. But these elders, they're compelled to tell you because they know you're listening and they want to share. They want to share. So I think these Tunnon as a community, people that work and live here in the city of Lethbridge, I think it's part of our responsibility to share what we can. As a Kanyam, you can speak about the service, but what happens inside, that's privileged information. So when you go to Akukatsu, what you call Sundance, we call it Akukatsu. As a visitor, you will see a lot, but you'll never know the inner workings unless you are a member of that particular society. So that's something that, there's knowledge out there that we can share. But I think as far as ceremonial space, home to me is sacred. I'm sure it is for everyone. When I moved home into our house, I put in protocol. And the number one protocol was no drugs or alcohol. Amen. And my grandchildren, they don't know what that is. They've never seen it. They've never seen it. They'll go visit somewhere and they'll see it, they freak out because it's not natural to them. And I think that's what I'm talking about. We've got to start with our young people. And the work that you do, and Malcolm, trying to enhance our life here in the city, I think that's where we need to kind of concentrate on too. So we're at about 2:30 right now. Does anybody have any questions? I get my lovely assistant over here.
He fell asleep here. Sorry.
I want to speak to Kitsipoksinon, our language, our Blackfoot language. I have a friend who really, I'm going to quote her words. I use that when I'm teaching our language. Our language, I believe as well, is a very intuitive spiritual language. It's also very descriptive. And when we speak to community in ceremonial spaces, well, our language is our culture. And and it's ongoing. Pretty much a daily basis, and it's very essential and profound that that it's spoken in ceremonies. And so when we speak to community, placemaking, or community and ceremonial spaces, our language is it brings us to, again, which means, to reiterate, a very, very profound spiritual place for us. And just to speak on a brief history of when the Kaina Board of Education took an initiative role and somewhat a leadership role in developing the Blackfoot Immersion Program. GALT and Nonix, they played very significant, important roles, and we wouldn't have done it without them. Our grandmothers, our grandfathers, there's so many of them. Right now, there's so many I could mention, but I think everyone knows here who they were. And so what I'm really getting at here is I really want to strongly advocate for a program that specifically focuses on our language here in this cultural center. I would even like to really advocate for an immersion program. One of the things that Barb and I did when we were teaching the immersion program, which taught me so much, particularly taught me, I learned so much from Gogo Sinoniksi, and they were little, very little when we got them, and to start teaching them, was firstly, they had to understand Igapi, what happened. Historically, Barb and I couldn't just start teaching our children just to start speaking it. They had to understand Igapi. And, you know, and tao, gisto no mate sini makubo sinoniksi. E goga gyapsi bo bags. Es boyabots to beat the gear. It doesn't matter how young our children are. And we are historically, based on research, we often have to reference research findings, is we were the best child rearing matapiks historically. So we never talk down or condescending to our children. So that's what we really try to embrace with our children and with the immersion program. So we had to tell them historically what happened. And they understood. They understood as young as they were. They understood. We told them about what happened to us historically. It can't be. And why we come to this place and still at this place where we're struggling to preserve our language. So that's something I really want to advocate, is because our children need to, and speaking on us having to help them understand how we were deprived. And the list goes on, I won't go on and on. Our elders have addressed so much of all these socioeconomic issues that go on, and how we were deprived, particularly through the residential school. But our children need to understand the history. And basically, TRC is not new. It's been here for a long time. But there was that apprehension of really getting there. And we should be, we say fearful. We need to be fearful to be able to face the truth. So we can move forward and actually really work at preserving Gistunon, Gitsibo Sunoni, Gitsabadaki Sunoni. And Ochkotok used to remind my family, Sagis Kunada Bikitatsamukikan. Okay.
We do have another agenda item. We have a hand up in the back. Do you need this?
Okay, everyone. I have to leave here soon, so I just wanted to say a couple of things. But in talking about placemaking, I feel like we're left out of the conversation a lot. Even my name's Tina. We've seen from afar, and he was Rick Crow's uncle. But there's actually a park here in Lethbridge, and it's named Pinaquim Park. Softball Valley. It's named Pinaquim Park. There's a key. Yeah, so there's this park in Lethbridge, and it's named after who's the same man that I'm named after, Red Crow's uncle. But if you go to that place, you don't know anything about Pinaquim. And there's a Q in the name. We don't even have a Q in our Blackfoot alphabet, okay? And it's because we were left out of the conversation. So I want to talk about accountability, and I want to talk about in working with these non-Indigenous organizations that I work with, I see a lot of where the funding's coming from. I see a lot of Indigenous funding coming to these organizations. And I feel like a lot of the time they think they know what's best for us. I think they think that they can just figure out what they need to do for us, and it's based on their ideologies, and it really has nothing to do with what we've said. So I think it's important that we hold these architects accountable, and we hold everybody here accountable, and that you all bear witness today that they are accountable to the Blackfoot Confederacy, and they're accountable to consult us, not only in having this conversation. Like, this conversation doesn't stop today. Like, this needs to continue, and we need to right through until completion of this project. And you know, when you break ground at that, when you break ground and you find that place where you're going to put this cultural center, you need to follow the protocols of our people, and you need to do it right. You need to leave offerings, get stuff done, and you need to have our elders. You know, we need both, you know, all of the elders here today. You need to make sure that they're there, and that they are the ones that are they're following the protocols of our people of breaking this ground. Because when you, in our ways, when you take something from the land, you always give back, and you always give them, you make that offering, get stuff done, you know, you make that offering, and you tell Creator, you know, I'm taking something right now, and I'm putting something back, and I'm doing this for a good reason, and I hope that it's still here when I'm done. So it's important that we follow those protocols, and it's important that everybody in this room knows that we need to hold these people accountable when you know, these projects are happening. And you know it's going to happen the right way if we're involved. And if you look at the wealth of knowledge in this room, there's so many powerful people and so many powerful voices, and they deserve to be part of this conversation and continuing to, not just after today, because this was a really good conference, and I really enjoyed these 2 days. But what I really got from it was that there's so many special people in this room, and you know, they had all had something to add to this conversation. And so if you are going to build this center, I think it's important to have each aspect of our culture ingrained in building this place, and having us be a part of the architecture too. How do we want this building built? You know, how do we want it to look? You know, we should be part of that, because you can't do it for us. And if you do happen to do it for us without our consultation, you know, people aren't going to be happy. You know, so I just want to make sure that everybody in this room knows that we're holding them accountable, and that we want to be part of the conversation moving forward. Yeah.
Absolutely, and I think I can vouch for some of the folks that sit on some of the committees. We make sure that our voices are heard. At least the meetings that I go to, I definitely, you'll hear from me. So, and as far as the language, I'll just share a quick story before they cut us off here. Language is something that I hear over and over and over and over again, but sad to say that unless you were born a speaker, it's pretty hard to pick it up and speak fluently. So again, I'm going to go back to Gokus or kids. It has to start there. If you are a speaker, you should be speaking to your grandchildren. So I tried an experiment. I have a 1-year-old. From the time he was born to right now, I only speak Blackfoot to him. And he doesn't even know his English name. It doesn't exist. His name is Kai. We forgot a couple times. We had to ask the mother, what's his English name? Oh, it's Kai. Oh, yeah. In the house, he's Nitanikapi. Wherever he goes, he's Nitanikapi. And here's the kicker that I didn't realize. All the siblings, 6, 7 to 10-year-old, they all call him Nitanikapi. They don't call him Kai. They call him Nitanikapi. So that's a start. So now the next thing is, every day I continue talking Blackfoot. So but you know, he's coming along. He's trying to say a few words, but by the time he's 2, I'm hoping that he's going to be speaking Blackfoot. Because when he starts, I guarantee you the siblings will start too. So this is something I thought I'd share with you as far as language, because I've been to 1,000 summits on language, and those people are still speaking English. Okay, let's give our panel a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, we got a question, oh, sorry.
Okay, Mr. Anikook Spot Walk. My name is Tanya Pace Crossfeld, and I'm the director at Opagoston. We work with children and families, so I can attest to what Travis is saying. These children are like, they just pick up everything. And also with all of the wisdom that you've shared today, I'm not going to go into too much detail about what I do. A lot of you know what we do in the community. But Opagoston is a good example of what happens when you build it, they'll come. We were in jeopardy of losing our funding about 10 years ago because we didn't have the space to house our programs. And we looked high and low, and we ended up moving across the street to an old bar. It used to be the Corner Pocket. And we anticipated with the growth from what we were currently operating into that building, we thought we'd have 10 years to grow in it. And in fact, it was within the first 8 months of being in that center that we outgrew it. So it shows that the need is there, that you build it and they will come, but it also shows how things line up. And I was part of the talks historically with Bob Tarlick as well. And there's a few of us, Ira was one of them, Trina, there was a few of us that were involved with that at the time. And we missed that opportunity because we were not on the same page. We couldn't decide how it was going to unfold. And so we lost that window of opportunity. And I'm sharing this with you because I think right now is a good opportunity. You have a leadership here in the city that is willing to work with our people. It is needed. It is, I've often come back to this and I wanted to define, because I think it's really important that we define what it is. Whether it's going to be a hub, like a co-location of services for like what we do and what Travis does. Is it a ceremonial center? Is it like a museum? Is it an interactive center? We have to have those conversations, but I think in the end we all agree that it is needed, that it does have a place here. When we were trying to get our building going, we had a little bit of cash that we had saved up. There wasn't much. And we went knocking on the bank's door, and the banks kind of laughed at us. And they said, why would we give a mortgage, $1 million, $1.2 million mortgage to a children's not-for-profit? What if you guys default on your loan? We're gonna look like the bad guys if we have to kick you out. No, it's too much risk. We went to the elders, and at the time the elders told us, they listened, and I said, you know, we have our wisdom committee and they're so awesome. Mimi Buka is one of them, Blanche. And what we were told was, well, let's, we have to go back to our ways. Let's have ceremonies so we can pray about this and ask for help. And right after that ceremony, things seemed, I actually was told by one of the bankers, the stars aligned for us. Because we had a broker that was looking, a building opened up. We had a broker that, at the time, Blood Tribe Leadership, they were building the multi-purpose center and a bunch of buildings out there. And so the leadership said, we went to them and they said, well, we can't finance you because you guys are off reserve, but we can put in a good word for you. So at the time, and I want to acknowledge the two people that really helped us, that was Kirby Manyfingers and Marcel Weaselhead. They told the funders at the time, which was the bank, they said, okay, we'll finance with you, but give our little sister in Lethbridge a little bit of a help by financing their building. And so it's kind of, they were getting these big multi-million-dollar contracts on the reserve. So they threw us a bone and we were able to get our little center funded. But when, at the end of the day, when we all met, the architect, the project manager, some of the bankers, and they said, we were all sitting here and we're saying the stars just aligned for you guys. Like it was just almost like too eerie that how everything just came together and we were all smiling. Elders were in that meeting too and they were all smiling. I think when there's a will, it happens when you do it in the right way. But just on a one note, I was always leery of this because when we've talked about reconciliation for so many years, and I feel like sometimes it's so frustrating. But Murray Sinclair put it, Chief Justice Murray Sinclair put it into perspective for me, because I was a real cynic, eh? Because I thought, geez, you know, it's always like we have to make sure the relationship building onus is on us. Yet we were, you know, our history and everything that's happened to us. But Murray Sinclair said something really profound that really made me think. He said two things. He says, first of all, he said, our history. We have to be the voices of our history. Otherwise, somebody else is going to write it down, and then we'll be referring in the future to it. So if you look at these books, some of the books that you see on our Blackfoot Ways, a lot of them are non-native authors, and people get mad, but yet nobody's jumping at the gun to start writing our own histories and start telling those stories. So we define our history through our voice. So it has to be our voice if we want our stories to be heard. That's the first thing. The second thing he said is reconciliation is like being a roommate. You know, in college when you share a dorm, you decide how that relationship is going to look. You can go around ignoring your roommate and just take up space together, or you could try and develop a relationship, or you can be really angry with that person and look at every little thing like, who used my shampoo, or, you know. But basically, that's what reconciliation is, how he defined it, and it really made sense to me. We have to decide how that relationship is going to go moving forward, because we are, you know, together in this, so to speak. And I think this, you know, hearing all the wisdom that was shared, I think you could have, you know, a lot of the questions that were asked, I think, Trina, you can attest to this. We went through this whole process with Mayor Bob Tarlick at the time, and at the end of the day, there was an impasse, and it came from our own people saying, no, we don't want to move forward because we don't know. And I understand that historically there's distrust. Why is the city wanting this? Is it to make a profit off of our culture? Is it to house? Who's going to be there? How's that going to look? But I think at the end of the day, you know, we have all these questions that we have to ask, but we do need to have that center. We need to have a place for our children. I work with a lot of youth that are in care, foster care. There's no place for them to access. There's no place in the city other than us, you know, through our elders, to access any kind of cultural knowledge or elders or anything like that. And so they're really, really desperate to have some kind of a center like that. So thank you.
Stop applauding. And now you can thank the panel. Thank you. We're probably a little behind, but let's just stretch our legs for 5 or so minutes, and then we will. And there's snacks, food, healthy-ish things over there. So and then come back, grab a tray of things, and then we'll have our next session.